Now, let me tell you something. When you walked away, that wasn't weakness. That was power. See, most people think staying proves love, but sometimes leaving proves self-respect. And the moment you chose yourself, the whole story changed. Walking away reveals your true value, and most people don't understand this until they actually do it. When you are always available, always understanding, always forgiving, your presence starts to feel normal to the other person. Not because you are not valuable, but because consistency without boundaries can be mistaken for permanence. People start believing you will always be there. They stop noticing the effort you make. They stop appreciating the emotional work you carry, and slowly your value becomes invisible in their routine. The moment you walk away, that routine breaks. Suddenly the messages stop. The emotional support disappears. The reassurance is no longer there. What felt ordinary becomes rare. What felt guaranteed becomes uncertain. And uncertainty forces attention. It forces reflection. It forces someone to finally see what was always there, but never fully appreciated. Walking away is not about punishment. It is not a strategy to make someone suffer. It is a decision to stop abandoning yourself. You tolerate more than you should. You wait longer than you should. And without realizing it, you teach the other person that this is acceptable. Walking away interrupts that lesson. It resets the standard. When someone can no longer reach you the same way, they begin replaying moments. They remember your patience during their difficult days. They remember how you listened, how you supported, how you stayed when it was inconvenient. The things that felt small suddenly feel significant. But the most important part of walking away is what it does to you, not what it does to them. Distance gives you perspective. It removes the emotional noise that kept you confused. You begin seeing patterns you ignored. You begin understanding where you overgave. You begin realizing that love should not require constant self-sacrifice to be maintained. That clarity is where your value becomes real to you first. And when you start seeing your own value, your energy changes. You stop chasing explanations. You stop trying to convince someone to treat you better. You stop measuring your worth through their attention. That shift is powerful because people feel energy before they understand it. Confidence without words communicates boundaries. Silence communicates strength. Detachment communicates self-respect. Walking away also exposes truth. If someone truly values you, distance moves them closer, not further. Effort appears. Communication becomes intentional. Actions become clearer. And if nothing happens, that is clarity too, not rejection of your worth, but confirmation of misalignment. Sometimes walking away is the only way to see whether someone was choosing you or simply benefiting from your presence. Your true value is not proven by how long you stay. It is revealed by what you refuse to tolerate. It is revealed by the moment you decide that your peace matters more than potential, that you deserve consistency, not confusion, that love should feel secure, not uncertain. When you walk away with self-respect, you send a message without speaking. You show that your presence is meaningful, that your time is valuable, that your heart is not something to be handled casually. And even more importantly, you show yourself that you are capable of choosing your own well-being, even when it is difficult, even when you still care, even when leaving hurts. Absence creates clarity in a way that conversations often cannot. When you are constantly present in someone's life, emotions overlap with routine. Feelings get mixed with comfort, and comfort can create illusion. A person may believe they value you, but they don't fully see your importance because they have never experienced life without your presence. Everything you do becomes part of the background instead of something consciously appreciated. The moment absence enters, the background disappears. The emotional noise quiets. Space forces awareness. Suddenly, there is time to notice what is missing instead of what is available. The small habits that once felt ordinary begin to stand out. The daily messages, the check-ins, the support during stressful moments, all of it becomes visible through its absence. Clarity often arrives in silence because silence removes distraction. When you are no longer there explaining your feelings, reminding someone of your needs, or trying to fix misunderstandings, the responsibility shifts. They are left alone with their thoughts. And thoughts, without interruption, become reflection. Reflection changes perception. It allows someone to replay memories without defensiveness. Arguments feel different when you're not trying to win them anymore. Your words start making sense later. Your effort becomes easier to see when it is no longer happening in real time. Absence slows everything down enough for truth to surface, but absence does something even more important for you. It separates emotion from reality. When you are inside a situation, you react. When you step away, you observe. You begin noticing patterns instead of moments. You see whether effort was consistent or occasional. You see whether promises were followed by action or just repeated. This distance turns confusion into understanding. Clarity is powerful because it removes fantasy. Many people stay attached to potential, to what something could be instead of what it is. Presence keeps hope alive even when evidence is inconsistent. Absence challenges that hope. It asks a simple question: what remains when you stop trying so hard? Sometimes clarity hurts. You realize you were overgiving. You realize you were patient longer than necessary. You realize that some connections were maintained by your effort more than mutual intention, but painful clarity is still freedom because it replaces uncertainty with truth. Absence also reveals emotional priority. When someone values you deeply, distance creates movement. Effort becomes visible. Communication becomes intentional. They reach out not from habit, but from desire. And if they do not, that is information too. Not a statement about your worth, but about their readiness, their capacity, their choice. For many people, absence is the first time they truly feel the emotional weight of losing access. Familiarity can hide appreciation, but distance highlights importance. It creates contrast, and contrast is what the human mind understands best. You cannot measure warmth until you feel cold. You cannot measure presence until you experience absence. Clarity is not about making someone miss you. It is about seeing clearly yourself. It is about understanding what you felt, what you needed, and what was actually happening. Without clarity, you remain stuck in cycles of questioning. With clarity, decisions become calmer. You stop negotiating with confusion. You stop waiting for signs that were never consistent. Absence is not emptiness. It is space, and space allows truth to breathe, emotions to settle, and perspective to grow. Men often understand your worth after losing access, not because they never cared, but because familiarity can create blindness. When someone knows you are always there, the mind relaxes. Effort feels less urgent. Appreciation becomes quiet instead of expressed. It is not always intentional neglect, but comfort can slowly replace awareness. The presence that once felt special starts feeling permanent, and permanence is something people rarely question. Access creates emotional security, and security can sometimes reduce urgency. When someone believes you will stay no matter what, they stop measuring the cost of their behavior. Small disappointments feel temporary. Delayed effort feels acceptable. They assume there is time to do better later, but later only feels real when access disappears. Losing access interrupts that assumption. The messages are no longer guaranteed. The emotional support is no longer immediate. The reassurance they relied on is suddenly missing. This creates a psychological shift. The brain begins comparing life with you to life without you, and comparison is where value becomes visible. Moments that once felt ordinary gain importance through memory. Your consistency stands out. Your patience stands out. The way you tried to understand them instead of fighting them becomes clearer in hindsight. Distance removes distraction, allowing someone to see the emotional work you carried that they never fully acknowledged before. But understanding worth after losing access is often tied to realization, not transformation. Realization is awareness. Transformation is change. Someone may recognize your value and still struggle to become the person capable of meeting it. This is an important distinction because many people mistake missing you for growth. Missing you is emotional. Growth is behavioral. When access is gone, curiosity appears. Questions start forming. They wonder what you are doing, whether you moved on, whether someone else is experiencing the care they once received. This curiosity is not always about possession. Sometimes it is about reflection. Losing something meaningful forces people to evaluate their role in that loss. Your absence also removes emotional cushioning. When you were present, you softened consequences, you explained, forgave, and stayed long enough for mistakes to feel less final. Without that cushioning, actions feel heavier. Words said in frustration echo longer. Understanding your worth often happens quietly. There may be no dramatic confession, no clear apology, no perfect explanation. Sometimes it exists in private thoughts, in moments when something reminds them of you, in the realization that what you offered was rare, not perfect, but real, not loud, but consistent. However, your worth is not created by their realization. It existed before they noticed it. Losing access does not increase your value. It reveals it. The difference matters because your value should never depend on someone's moment of awareness. Their understanding is a reflection of their perspective, not the definition of your importance. For you, This realization changes how you view the past. You stop thinking you were too much and begin seeing you were simply giving to someone who was not fully aware. You stop questioning whether your effort mattered and start recognizing that effort always has value, even when it is not acknowledged immediately. Access is powerful because it shapes perception. When it disappears and genuine intention, understanding arrives late sometimes, but lateness does not erase truth. Self-respect is more powerful than chasing because it changes the position you stand in emotionally. When you chase, you move towards someone hoping they choose you. When you stand in self-respect, you remain grounded in the belief that the right person will meet you where you are. This shift seems small on the surface, but it transforms how every interaction feels. Chasing is driven by fear, fear of losing the connection, fear of being misunderstood, fear that if you stop trying, everything will end. That fear creates urgency. You send another message, you explain again, you give one more chance, even when you are tired. You convince yourself that effort proves love, but often what it proves is your willingness to ignore your own limits. Self-respect operates differently. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop negotiating your worth. You express your feelings once clearly. You show effort, but you also observe effort. And equality is where healthy connection exists. When you chase, the dynamic becomes uneven. One person pursues, the other responds. Over time, this imbalance can reduce perceived value, not because you are less valuable, but because constant pursuit removes mystery and removes the need for the other person to invest. Investment is what creates attachment. Effort creates meaning. Without space to invest, people may appreciate you, but not fully value you. Self-respect introduces boundaries, and boundaries create clarity. They communicate what is acceptable without needing repeated explanations. Instead of asking someone to treat you better again and again, you demonstrate what happens when they do not. Distance replaces argument. Calm replaces urgency. This communicates strength more effectively than persuasion ever can. There is also a psychological shift within you. Chasing keeps your focus on their reaction. Self-respect returns your focus to your standards. You begin asking different questions. Instead of, why are they pulling away? You ask, is this meeting what I need? Instead of, how do I keep them? You ask, this connection consistent? These questions move you from fear to awareness. Self-respect slows decisions. It gives you time to observe patterns instead of reacting to moments. Someone may say the right things, but self-respect waits for actions. Someone may promise change, but self-respect watches consistency. This patience protects your emotional energy because it prevents you from investing deeply in uncertainty. Another important truth is that chasing often hides your real value. When you overextend, people see your effort, but may not see your boundaries. They experience your availability without understanding its cost. Choosing self-respect can feel uncomfortable at first because it requires tolerance for uncertainty. You must accept that you cannot control someone's choice. You must allow silence without rushing to fill it. You must accept that if someone does not step forward, the answer is already present. This discomfort is temporary, but the clarity it creates is lasting. Self-respect is powerful because it protects your identity inside relationships. It ensures that love does not require self-abandonment. It reminds you that connection should add to your life, not require you to shrink. And when you stand in that energy, you naturally attract people who recognize value without needing to lose access first. Silence makes him reflect on what he lost because silence removes the distractions that once protected him from facing reality. When communication is constant, there is always another chance to avoid deeper thought. Another conversation, another joke, another normal moment that keeps everything feeling unchanged. Silence interrupts that flow. It creates space where thoughts grow louder and memories become more present. When you stop speaking, you stop explaining. When you stop explaining, he is left with his own interpretation of events. That is where reflection begins. Reflection does not happen easily when someone is still receiving your energy. It happens when that energy disappears. The absence of your voice forces him to replay past interactions without immediate reassurance or correction. Silence changes perspective because it slows time emotionally. Moments that felt small begin to carry weight. Words said casually feel more significant when there is no opportunity to soften them. Situations that were brushed aside start returning to his mind, not as passing events, but as unfinished thoughts. The brain naturally searches for closure, and silence creates unanswered questions. These questions often revolve around value. He begins wondering whether he underestimated you, whether he assumed you would stay, whether he ignored effort that now feels rare. Reflection is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet curiosity that appears unexpectedly when something reminds him of you, when he notices the absence of your support, when he reaches for a conversation that is no longer available. Silence also removes emotional comfort. When you were present, your responses provided reassurance even during conflict. You explained your feelings. You tried to understand his perspective. You stayed long enough for tension to fade. Without that comfort, emotions feel less buffered. Mistakes feel more visible because there is no immediate repair happening. There is a psychological effect to silence that many people underestimate. Humans assign value to what is not easily accessible. When communication becomes limited or stops completely, attention increases. The mind begins to fill the gap with imagination, memory, and questions. This does not mean silence is manipulation. It means silence allows natural awareness to occur without interference. Reflection through silence often reveals patterns. How often you created emotional stability. Patterns are harder to see when you are inside them. Distance highlights repetition. It shows whether effort was mutual or supported mainly by you. Silence also removes the illusion of endless time. When you are present, there is a belief that conversations can happen later, apologies can happen later, effort can happen later. Silence introduces uncertainty about later. This uncertainty makes lost opportunities feel real. Things left unsaid begin to matter. Actions not taken begin to stand out. Another important aspect of silence is that it shifts emotional responsibility. While you were speaking, you carried part of the emotional processing. You explained what was wrong, what you needed, what you felt. Silence transfers that processing back to him. He must think without guidance. He must interpret without reassurance. This independent reflection often leads to deeper awareness than conversations alone. However, silence does not guarantee change. Reflection is awareness, not action. He may understand what he lost and still struggle to respond differently. This distinction is important because silence is not about forcing realization. It is about allowing truth to surface without constant emotional negotiation. For you, silence is not emptiness, it is protection. It prevents repeated conversations that lead nowhere. It protects your energy from being spent explaining the same feelings again. It gives you space to hear your own thoughts instead of reacting to his responses. In that space, you also reflect. You see what you tolerated, what you hoped for, and what you truly need. Silence creates emotional contrast. Contrast creates awareness. And awareness is often the first moment someone recognizes the depth of what they had, not when everything was available, but when it is no longer within reach. Your growth becomes the reason he cannot stop thinking about you, because growth changes your identity in ways that are visible even from a distance. When someone knew you in a certain way, always available, always patient, always trying, they form a mental picture of you that feels stable. Growth disrupts that picture. It introduces a version of you they did not expect, and unexpected change creates curiosity. Growth is not loud at first. It begins internally. You start understanding your patterns, your emotional triggers, your limits. You begin noticing where you overgave and where you ignored your own needs. This awareness slowly changes how you respond. You pause instead of reacting immediately. You observe instead of explaining everything. You choose calm instead of urgency. These small shifts create a different energy around you. Energy is what people remember even more than words. When you grow, your energy becomes grounded. You no longer seek validation in the same way. You no longer chase reassurance the same way. You still care, but your care is balanced by self-respect. This balance feels different to someone who experienced the earlier version of you. It feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar often becomes memorable. Growth also changes your boundaries. You become clearer about what you accept and what you do not. You stop tolerating inconsistency simply because you understand someone's potential. You start valuing actions over promises. This clarity makes your presence more intentional. When you choose to give attention, it is conscious. When you step back, it is calm rather than reactive. That intentionality increases perceived value. For him, your growth creates reflection because it removes the predictability he relied on. He may remember how conversations used to go, how you used to respond, how you used to stay. Seeing you respond differently or not respond at all forces him to recognize that something changed. Change invites questions, and questions keep thoughts returning to you. Growth also reshapes memory. When he thinks about you now, he compares two versions, who you were then and who you appear to be now. This contrast highlights your evolution. He may begin recognizing that the patience you showed was strength, not weakness. That the effort you gave was intentional, not automatic. That the version of you he experienced was someone investing deeply, not someone who lacked options. Another reason growth stays on someone's mind is because growth signals emotional independence. Independence challenges assumptions. If he believed you would always remain emotionally available, your independence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty increases attention. The mind tries to understand what changed, why it changed, and whether access to you still exists. Your growth also redirects your focus toward your own life. You invest in your goals, your peace, your routines, your identity outside the relationship. This expansion makes your life feel fuller. When someone senses that you are no longer centered around them, your presence gains weight. Attention that was once guaranteed becomes something chosen, and chosen attention carries more meaning. Growth does not mean you stopped caring. It means you stopped losing yourself while caring. This distinction is powerful because it shows emotional maturity. You can hold feelings without abandoning boundaries. You can remember the connection without needing to return to the same dynamic. That maturity is often what stays in someone's mind long after distance appears. For you, growth changes the story you tell yourself. You stop viewing the past as proof that you were not enough. Instead, you see it as a period where you were learning. You recognize that growth was always the outcome, whether the relationship continued or not. This perspective creates confidence that is quiet but noticeable. When someone cannot stop thinking about you because you grew, it is not about nostalgia alone. It is about witnessing transformation. Transformation suggests possibility, depth, and emotional strength. People remember individuals who evolve because evolution challenges the idea that they fully understood you. Your growth becomes memorable because it shows that your value was never static. It was expanding. And expansion creates distance between who you were when they had easy access and who you are now. Someone who still feels deeply but moves with awareness, intention, and self-respect.